All right. Well, welcome everybody. And thank you so much for joining us for this very important conversation that we're going to be having today, all about the intersection of physical and mental health in the perinatal period. The title of this webinar is The Fourth Trimester, Postpartum Mental Health and Physical Recovery. My name is Paige Bellenbaum, and I am the founding director of an organization called the Motherhood Center, located in New York City, that provides maternal mental health care to pregnant and postpartum people experiencing perinatal mood and anxiety disorders. And we're going to hear a little bit more about the Motherhood Center today from one of our speakers. I wanted to just cover a few housekeeping items before we jump right in. We are recording today's presentation, so we will have it available for all of you to review in case you joined late or you want to share it with a friend. It will be emailed, the link, to everybody who registered for today's event. So because we just have an hour and we have so much to cover, I'm going to jump right in and introduce all of our esteemed panelists to you today. I'm going to start with Dr. Catherine Birndorf, who is the co-founder and CEO and medical director of the Motherhood Center. Dr. Birndorf is a reproductive psychiatrist and the co-founder and CEO and medical director of the Motherhood Center of New York. Dr. Birndorf is the founding director of the Payne Whitney Women's Program at Weill Cornell Medicine, New York Presbyterian Hospital. In addition, she is a clinical associate professor of psychiatry and obstetrics and gynecology. Dr. Birndorf has appeared on the Today Show, Good Morning America, MSNBC, and CNN, and her most recent book, published by Simon & Schuster in 2019, is entitled What No One Tells You, A Guide to Your Emotions from Pregnancy to Motherhood, a must-read if any of you happen to be expecting or a new mother yourself. We are also joined by Leah Keller. She is the creator, co-founder, and creative director of Every Mother. Leah is a certified personal trainer and the creator of Every Mother's Embody program, formerly the DIA method, a clinically proven online exercise program endorsed by medical and birth professionals worldwide. The Embody program grew out of her private training practice in New York City and earned unparalleled medical validation in studies from Weill Cornell Medicine Hospital and the Hospital for Special Surgery. Leah holds an MA in English and a BA in psychology, and she's been featured as a women's health expert by major media outlets, including NPR and Good Morning America. She lives with her husband and children in San Francisco. We are also joined by Janelle Jones, a mother of two and a former patient of the Motherhood Center. Janelle is a Brooklyn native of Caribbean descent and is a registered nurse. Janelle's a mother of two who is also a PMAD survivor and experienced diastasis recti. Some of Janelle's hobbies include traveling and reading books. Janelle was recently featured in a New York Times article, Life in the Throes of Postpartum Depression. If you haven't read it, I strongly encourage you to. And Janelle bravely uses her own personal story as a tool for maternal mental health awareness and change. So I'm going to jump right into questions with our esteemed panelists for today. And first, I'd just like all of you to please, if you could briefly tell us a little bit about yourself and your organization. What services do you offer? And Janelle, as this pertains to you, would love for you to tell us a little bit about your own personal experience and how it's relevant to today's conversation. So Dr. Birndorf, why don't you kick us off?
Okay, thanks, Paige. And nice to see you, Janelle and Lee. Very excited to be here. I am Catherine Birndorf. I'm a psychiatrist, more specifically a reproductive psychiatrist, so menses to menopause. And then I started doing just perinatal with the start of the Motherhood Center back in 2017, before, during, and after pregnancy. So I've gotten super specific. My academic area of expertise is around medications, psychotropic medications when people are thinking about getting pregnant, are pregnant, or postpartum and nursing. I've always wanted to empower women to make difficult decisions, particularly when they were told that they didn't have a choice, either go off, stay on, don't take, they didn't know what to do. And I really love working with women at a time when they are struggling and feel like they're at a dead end, but really there's infinite opportunity and options. And I find the work super gratifying, and I've always done this since I started many years ago. This has been my interest. I couldn't decide between OB and psychiatry is really what it comes down to, but I knew my skill set was listening to stories and talking and thinking with people, as opposed to doing surgery and delivering babies, which is also super cool, but was not where I felt like I wanted to spend my time. You couldn't spend enough time. Anyhow, so the Motherhood Center is kind of an embodiment, if you will, of everything I've ever done. And it is, what I love about it is, in starting it and partnering with Paige and the others who helped us get this going and are running it now 7 years into it, is to create something that didn't exist before. And it's really cool because there's this huge gap between basic outpatient services, of which there are not enough. That's like, you go to therapy, maybe you find a group, maybe you take meds, you see a pharmacologist. So maybe once a week, maybe once a month, and then inpatient, which is the highest level of care and really hard to get into unless you're really struggling in a, profound kind of suicidal, homicidal, or unable to care for yourself kind of way. So that's serious. And P.S., no one wants to keep you in there that long. Insurance companies certainly don't want to pay for it. So there's this giant gap between these levels of care. And there's also education and advocacy, which is some of the work we do at the Motherhood Center. But in this middle ground, this vast abyss, there's nothing. And we really wanted to fill that gap. And that's what we do with our day program, our day hospital. So we'll, I'm sure, talk much more about it. I'll stop talking. But we do, it's an intensive outpatient treatment. It is the highest level of care you can get treatment in outside of a hospital. So it's, again, we are trying to make it accessible, available, and it is a curriculum. It's kind of like mother school for people who are struggling with depression, anxiety, bipolar disorder, psychosis, and all the transitions to motherhood that go with that. So there's a wide range of those who come for treatment in our day program. And then again, we treat in the outpatient. In the outpatient department, we treat all kinds of, mild, moderate, and severe illnesses. And then we have education and advocacy, and Paige does a lot of that work. So goodbye. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Birndorf. Leah.
Yes. Well, I think in many ways there are parallels in that we are really all about empowering and educating women as they transition to motherhood about the physical changes that their bodies are going through, so that they can feel their best during the pregnancy. They can minimize and avoid a lot of sort of collateral damage that happens from the pregnancy and the birth, and then recover and feel their best postpartum, which is physical. And we also know that once we get moving, we feel better mentally too. It's all, we're whole people. Each of us kind of specializes in a specific area, but we're really treating whole people. And I got into this when I was in New York City working as a private trainer, and I started to specialize in pre and postnatal, and women were struggling with their abdominal muscles literally split apart. So, and it's hard to train muscles that are physically separated and injured. And so I went deep into physical therapy journals and trainings and learned how to help these women recover. And what we also found is that once they're healing their deep core muscles, everything starts to work better. They stopped leaking. They had improvements in sexual health, all these other things. And so that eventually led to the studies. But ultimately, I think we both share this very big heart for women, wanting to empower them with real evidence-based information so they can feel their best, so they can be healthy, so they can show up for themselves, show up for their children, and just live a good quality of life. And I feel like so many things we struggle with are because we just don't know. So here we are. Let's answer your questions. Let's inform you. Let's help you be in charge of your recovery, your transition to motherhood.
Thank you so much, Leah. And Janelle, a little bit about you.
Hi, everyone. So my name is Janelle. I'm a mother of two. I graduated from the day program in February of this year. And while I was in the day program, it was, well, like I always say, it saved my life. But There was just so much I gained, I feel, regarding treatment with my postpartum depression, postpartum anxiety, but also just the knowledge of that not everyone, but a lot of people go through this. And why is it not spoken about? Why when I go to my OBGYN, are they not talking about PMADs, or are they not talking about pelvic floor therapy? And I had to do a lot of the research on my own to get like pelvic floor therapy. I had to actually switch from one of my providers to another provider so that I could get that sort of treatment, because it's not all in one. It's like you go to your OBGYN and they're just checking the baby, but any signs and symptoms you have, as long as it's not putting the baby at risk, is like not important. So yeah, I think I'm just so happy to be here. So happy to be advocating again and sharing my story.
Thank you. I'm going to put a question out to everybody. Can you all touch on the connection between physical and mental health, and why it's so important for us as a society to consider the whole of a birthing person, not just one half at a time?
I'll just jump in to say, why is it a question? Why isn't it a rhetorical question and just a statement? My question would be, why are they separate? They are the same thing. So I'll just throw that right back out.
Well, and I'll say that as a trainer working with women as they're recovering physically from birth, I really leaned heavily on my BA in psychology, but I mean, I referred to specialists all the time, and many of my clients were already seeing a therapist. So I felt like we were part of a collaborative care team, but I feel like you just can't help, but they are intertwined. And so, yeah, that is how we recover. Yeah.
Yeah, and I feel like if your mind isn't there, if you can't even get up out of the bed, nothing else is going to get you there. You have to be in the right state of mind, because really, like, I learned in nursing school, one of my funny enough, my psych teacher, my psych professor, she said, if your mind isn't okay, nothing else in the body will be okay. And I realized we hold so much tension throughout our body that we don't even know about, so much anxiety, so much discomfort, so if we stop looking at it as two separate things, I feel like so much more healing will come through.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely.
Without the health of one, you really can't have the health of the other. I think they're so inextricably linked, which is what I meant when I said the same. They're obviously not exactly the same, but they are parts of a whole. And I think when we separate them, we get into trouble. Mm-hmm. And I think that unfortunately our healthcare system in the US keeps them very separate in more ways than one. So it's complicated, but it's both complicated and not complicated. They are inextricably linked, and the health of one depends on the other.
I'll also say that in my experience, just coming into this moment of the transition to motherhood, I've often seen traumas from earlier experiences, whether it was a sexual abuse experience or struggles with eating disorders, body dysmorphia, those earlier struggles that people had dealt with and felt like they were behind them, all of a sudden are there, and they're in the room again as they go through birth, which might just, it's this body is re-experiencing some of that and remembering that. And it can be really an opportunity for deeper healing, but it can also be really hard to go through that. Yeah.
I appreciate that, Leah. And I'm wondering, Dr. Birndorf, if you can speak to a little bit about that on the psychological lens, right? A lot of the things Leah mentioned that can manifest physically in that regard can also manifest emotionally and psychologically.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, into the part about sort of the recapitulation of past, right, in the birth. I mean, so many different thoughts going through my head, but really, I think that the past is always a part of us, right? It doesn't have to own us, but without processing it, it tends to live a little larger than it needs to. That can manifest in physical ways, in somatic ways. People have sort of chronic stomach aches. And again, there are stomach issues or, other, gastrointestinal issues. And it also may be related to stress or other psychological problems that have never been addressed or expressed. So what I think is so excellent about the perinatal period is that it's a moment, it is a complete shift. It is to me, the biggest change in a person's life, period. Right? First of all, you grow a human inside of you, which blows my mind every time. And that's, forget all this stuff. I'm going to just jump ahead, and I don't mean to like, of what you go through to get that to happen is its own big thing. Very complicated in many cases. And I think it changes everything about who you are and your identity. And all of a sudden you go from having a mom, whether she's alive or not, to being a mom in one way, shape, or form. And again, that may be through actual birthing. It can come in other forms as well, but it is profoundly changing. And I think that to not address that transition and all the stuff that came before it, not all, it's not like you can get to all of it, but it often revisits. I mean, that's what I'm thinking of, Leah, as you said, so much is recapitulated, right? Even things you didn't remember, things that are bodily sensations, things that you've held on to, both psychologically, physically, spiritually, emotionally, all kinds of ways, can reappear. It's a really profound time where you think it's all anew, but there is also old that comes to revisit that has to be addressed. And there's much more to say on that, but I'll give other people a moment to jump in.
I'm gonna switch gears a little bit and kind of piggyback on this huge transition that you both referenced. Everyone has referenced that a new mother birthing person in particular is going through in this transition to motherhood. And along with that process, so often new mothers can refer to or feel as though they're broken or like their body has failed them in some way. This could be pertaining to the birth itself, complications during the pregnancy, difficulties breastfeeding and the postpartum, experiencing diastasis recti and pelvic floor. How can mothers reconcile their identities as their bodies are changing and may not feel the same anymore?
I'll just keep talking, but I do want to just say, speaking of broken, I mean, you can't grow a human, and I appreciate the comment that just got made about, that there's something inside of you, right? Like, again, how could your body not change? I mean, you can't grow a human inside of you without it completely changing and I think we expect to just go right back to like whatever it was, whatever we were before, physically, mentally. I mean, we are completely changed forever and ever. There's no return here. There's no return policy. So it's really complex. And if you're not talking about it, then you think you're by yourself in it. You think you're the only one having this strange, unusual experience, when really, like Janelle said, why are we talking about this? It's happening to all of us who are in this, sort of developmental stage of matrescence, of becoming a mother, of the transition to motherhood. And again, you can, parenthood, you can input whatever fits. It is enormous. And to not acknowledge, I mean, broke, I don't know, it makes me so upset to hear that. And yet I know that is how so many women feel, physically, emotionally, and in all kinds of ways. And honestly, it's a difference, it's a change. There are lots of parts of that, but to broken, no. I mean, yes, things break, but the psychological implications of that is that we'll never be the same again, and that somehow we're worse off. Not the case.
Yeah, I agree with you, Catherine. Or Dr. Birndorf. I feel like, once a mother has a child, it's always like a loss, right? Like you're going to lose your independence, you're going to lose your flexibility, you're going to lose, it's like people always think, oh, you won't be able to do this anymore, you won't be able to do that. But I feel like once you become a mother, because I feel like most people choose to become a mother at some point, right? You're really gaining, you may feel broken, but you're rebirthed too. So I feel like there's a new identity because you gave birth. You're now new as well. You're not just a woman anymore. You're a mother, you're a new identity. So it's like we think of it as being broken, but really, I feel like I saw a picture that said, like it's a mirror, right? When a mirror shatters and you try to put the pieces back together, there's like these gaps, right? But I feel like when there's the gaps with the mirror, it's like love from the child, because now you have this unconditional love from a child, from a baby that has known you for the last 10 months and only wants you. And then you gain all these other experiences, whether it be the late night feeding, the diaper changing, you become resilient to certain things, even though you are kind of going like crazy, right? Your mind is everywhere, but you are still able to still manage. I feel like we may lose our old self, but we're gaining something or someone so much more important to your family once you become a mother.
Well
Yeah,
said.
I think that was so well said. And I think to really find the resilience in that opportunity is to become your stronger self. Like you might have been strong in a way prior to this, that previous identity was strong and was independent and was all the things that person was, but this new person can be so much more and so much stronger. And your body, which may have been a traumatic experience to go through pregnancy or birth, has now created a human. Like it is such an awesome and amazing thing. And to like embrace that change and to find how you can be strong and healthy and functional and feeling your best, it can be even better than before pregnancy. Even your sex life can be better than before pregnancy. And that might sound like, depending on where you are in that moment of postpartum, you might be like, don't even talk to me about that. But it's true. It can become a new reality that's so much better, so much more.
One of the things that I'm sure those in the audience that are newer expecting mothers can relate to, and perhaps we all can as well, as in this new and shifting role of motherhood, we can become experts at not putting our own needs at the front of the line. Pushing off our own health and our mental health because of this unflappable commitment to taking care of our little baby. And what can happen in that, as a result of that, is so oftentimes we can not pay attention to, not treat some of our own emotional struggles. We refer to it as white knuckling it, right? So if we're feeling depressed or anxious, we might feel like we just need to suck it up, that this is normal, we need to push forward. The most important thing is caring for our baby through the lens of physical. We might be struggling with pelvic floor issues. We might have very, debilitating diastasis recti, but we feel like that's just what it is to be a mother, right? This is just goes along with the transition itself. And so often I think women find themselves in this position where they have just put it off for so long. To out myself, I still be a little bit when I sneeze, and I had my last child 14 years ago, right? Like, I feel like this is something that we're just kind of, we just need to endure. This is part of becoming a mother. And I'd love to hear everybody's perspective on both the physical and emotional aspects of this. How can we prioritize ourselves? Why is it important?
I'll go first for this one. I think that I feel like prioritizing yourself, it sounds so like selfish, right? And I feel like I personally, you think like, okay, yeah, I'm gonna go to the doctor. I'm gonna go to the pelvic floor therapist. I'm gonna go speak with my psychologist or my psychiatrist, right? But your child needs you. And so you're gonna say, okay, you know what? I'll cancel this appointment and I'll just come back next week, right? I'll go back next week and then next week and then next week. And then you end up not going for a year. And like I'm about 13 months postpartum. And the last time I saw my pelvic floor therapist was about 18 months ago, right? Let's say, or maybe 14 months ago. Now, and it's the same reason, because I put it off, because I thought I think you have like you have so much time that you can keep putting it off. But then there's a point where it's like if you can't help yourself, you can't help others. And I really realized that. I mean, my dad used to tell me that all the time, but also in the Motherhood Center, it was a commitment, right? 10 to 3 every day. You're putting yourself first, 10 to 3, 10 to 3, 10 to 3, Monday to Friday, right? And in doing that, I realized if I'm putting myself first and I'm showing up for myself, I'm better able to show up for others, because now I've refilled my cup and I can pour whatever else is overflowing can go to others. Whereas if I feel like I'm being sucked dry, there's nothing left. So I think saying no is one of the biggest things that I've learned to do and prioritize. Is this really going to help me and my children, or is it just going to help others, So just trying, I mean, it's hard because it might sound bad, but you really have to take care of yourself. And people say it like, yeah, you need to take care of yourself, but it's like you have to actively do it for yourself, because if you don't do it for you, your husband might do it, your partner might do it, but you really have to do it for yourself, because only you know what you need.
Awesome.
And
So
that's
well.
So well said. I'm like, yes, please sign me up. Yes, that. So good. Well
Yeah.
said. So hard.
It is. It is. And I feel like this is a lesson we need to keep learning, at all the different stages of motherhood and probably life. One just small practical tool that I want to mention, because you were giving us an example of seeing your pelvic floor PT, who we love, and we have pelvic floor PTs on staff and they inform a lot of our programming. But it can be so hard to get out to an appointment. So one tool that is at your disposal is Every Mother. We are a very accessible app, and we help you do your homework. We help you stay consistent and do your pelvic floor lengthening, your deep breathing, your core strengthening, whatever it is that you need. We are there for you to help support you, so that if you can't make an appointment, because sometimes you got to take care of the sick kid, sometimes you really do need to miss an appointment. You can still kind of stay consistent and give yourself those 10 minutes, even if you can't get to a full appointment. So anyway, that's just a tool out there. Yeah.
My virtual care has also really, I mean, if there was one good thing about the pandemic, was the advent of virtual care. I mean, I always love, it's such a profound memory of mine, seared in my mind, where I was standing, what I was wearing on Friday, the 13th of March, when we made the decision to close our doors to the day program. And we had, I don't know how many women were there and were depending on us. They, we also have a nursery, so their babies were there because moms bring their babies. And we practiced over the weekend. We've been getting ready for it because we saw it coming a little bit, and we got ready for virtual treatment. We're like, we're going to open Monday virtually, period. There is no choice. And we did. And I think and now we have both programming, both virtual and in-person programming. And to your point, Leah, it's like, it's really the accessibility of that, the ability to have women get care from their own homes or from a distance. Again, we have some state licensing, there are issues, there are many issues, but we're on it, right? We're staying up with it to really continue this level of care so that we can treat people. Who would have thought? It blew open something so big and so exciting, because we can help more people in more places. So, and we're hoping to develop an app. We've got a lot of things cooking, but it's really important, because to your point, Jen, if you aren't taking care of yourself and your kids, and that is the priority, if you are doing that, I mean, you're going to miss things in life. So you're going to miss appointments because your kids are sick, or because they have to be somewhere and it conflicts with what you need to be doing. So it's always something. So the more accessible things are that help us take care of ourselves, the better off, I think.
I've developed a bit of an aversion, to be perfectly honest, with the term self-care. And the reason for that is because I'm in the business of new and expecting mothers. And I realize that when we think of the term self-care, we almost automatically jump to getting a mani-pedi or getting our hair done. And as we all know, when we are a transitioning mother, a birthing person, we do not have time for those things, right? So I tend to veer away from the term self-care and say self-preservation. And as I'm listening to all of you speak, I think we're all illustrating very distinct levels of self-care / self-preservation, right? When we are putting ourselves first, right? Not only to benefit ourselves, but those around us. And so, you know, I so appreciate us having this conversation about prioritizing our emotional wellness and mental health in this very vulnerable period of time, and our physical health as well, because I think those are both very direct examples of how, as I mentioned in my previous question, we neglect ourselves and our self-preservation in this process, and how important it is, you know, again, for the sake of ourselves and our families, to really prioritize these aspects of our well-being. And I'm wondering, you know, you both come from very specific fields. I want to give you both an opportunity to speak a little bit to, without giving away too much of your special sauce. You know, if someone were to say, you know, Dr. Birndorf, what are some of the most important things I can do to take care of my mental health? Or Leah, what are some of the most important things I can do to tend to and care for my physical health through the lens of pelvic floor and diastasis recti? How would you respond to that, both of you? Big question, I know.
Well, I can go first.
Okay.
So I think that one of, like, to put it in just kind of the simplest nutshell, our core and pelvic floor muscles go through a really big transition physically when we grow a child and then birth the child. So those muscles need some very specific care and nurturing to recover, but your body is resilient and your body is strong and it wants to recover. So with just a little sort of nudging in the right direction, your body will start to feel like itself, function like itself, and all those things. Perhaps even better than before, because now you're really invested in like thinking about these muscles that maybe before you kind of took for granted. Like, I don't know, that's something in there, but I'm not really thinking about it. So those muscles, just like other skeletal muscles, whether it's your biceps or your legs, those are healthy when they can go through a full range of motion, when they can fully relax and open, and when they can fully engage and flex. And so some women need to work a little bit more on relaxing and releasing those muscles, especially if they have chronic pelvic pain or kind of hold tension in their pelvic muscles. Other women need to work a little bit more on the strengthening if there's some prolapse or weakness without a sort of tightness. And sometimes there's both. So ultimately, we want to work on learning how to do correct deep core activation, which we focus on a lot in the app. If we have time later, I could give more of a demo, but I don't want to take too much time. But you really want to coordinate your breath and do a full engagement of your deep core and pelvic floor. And then you want to inhale and let everything go. So that's a very quick summary, but you want to be able to relax those muscles. You want to be able to engage those muscles consciously through the full range of motion. And as you start to do that, your body will very quickly start to do that for you. Like it'll kind of remember how to activate, remember how to relax. And yeah.
It'd be fun to do some exercises. I'll give you the quick and dirty. I would say first and foremost, psychologically speaking, if you think something's off, then something's off. Believe yourself. So it's not like you're going to go back to what was normal or your old self. I can't say that, and it's not usual. But if something's not right, then it's not right. And you have to, unfortunately, it's a hard time to necessarily advocate for yourself, but just try to speak up and don't be scared. And I know the shame, the stigma, the fear, what if I say this and someone thinks I'm crazy, or they take my kid, or I get laughed at, or I'm embarrassed. There are a million things, but please, if something's not right, don't take no for an answer. You cannot stop. And I find that people, a lot of people, by the time they get to me, they've tried, and someone was like, that's typical. There's a lot of like, and I don't, the medical field is a terrible offender of this. You know, you're fine. Like the things you don't know about, you don't always explore. You know, doctors like to have answers. So sometimes people are, you know, scared to not know, but you know, and it's hard to trust yourself, but it's like, if you know, and it's there, and keep going. Don't stop with the first person, the first nurse, the first anybody, the first therapist of any sort. Just keep going. If you're getting blown off, then you gotta, and then find an ally, find a family member, a friend, you know, anybody, someone you meet on the bus who, you know, will take you, who will listen, who will hear you, where you can share and be honest and say what's happening. So I guess all of what I'm saying is tell your story, tell your symptoms, tell your story, find community, find confidants, find people who will listen. And I think the more we share, the more we talk, the better everyone feels. Because PS, there's a reason there are 200 people right now in the middle of the day wanting to talk about this stuff. It's because we all feel it. I felt it. I paid everyone on this group. We all know it. We felt it. We've been there. And this is the normal. Not being normal is the normal. Do you know what I'm saying? I know I shouldn't be using those words, but I'm going to say that, and I wish we could talk about it that way, because that's the truth. And that's not what the way we see things. So push, talk, advocate, get help. Therapy, if you can get yourself to therapy, groups, there's so many, everything's proliferating out there in terms of where you can get help. I hope it's good. If it's not, seek it somewhere else. Education groups, medications if you need them. There are a million different things you can do. Books you can read. And again, just resources out there. And we have tons of them on the Motherhood Center website, and we can give you more. And Leah and Janelle know, you know, we've all availed ourselves of these things. No one's alone. You're not alone. You don't have to be alone. I know it can feel lonely, but you're not alone. So it's really finding a way to have a hand to hold through this new period of time as you transition to motherhood or parenthood.
And I guess as also a follow-up question to that, why is it so important to get and seek help for all of these conditions, both emotional and physical?
Can I answer as a survivor?
You please, and I'll take it away.
It's important because mentally, right? Well, let me go back. Let me retract my statement. When I was pregnant with my second, I felt like I was feeling my abs tear apart in a way, and I was feeling a lot of pressure, and I'm a med surg nurse, so I'm always on my feet. I'm pulling patients, you know, I'm doing everything. If there was a list of everything you shouldn't do while you're pregnant, that was me. I was the poster, right? And it's hard to not do your job when you're pregnant because you're like, well, I can still do it. You know, like, I'm okay. I'm just pregnant. I'm not disabled. I'm just pregnant, right? So in doing all of that, I ended up like really feeling the pressure of, you know, like my pelvic floor at one point I thought I was going to go into preterm labor. And because I'm a nurse, I know a lot of the signs and symptoms. I've did OB rotations, I've done mother baby, like I know certain things to look out for. But that's me. I have the knowledge. A lot of other people wouldn't. So I was on my doctor, like, listen, I'm feeling this pressure. Can I go to a physical therapist? What do you expect them to do? Surgery? That's what she told me. So I was like, okay, you know what? No problem. I ended up looking into NYU, and they actually referred me to a pelvic floor therapist, my doctor, Dr. Gratz. She's amazing. She was like, okay, you know what? I know you're feeling this. Let's see what we can do for you. Okay, we'll do pelvic floor therapy. Go and see how that helps. Let me know how it's going. You know, she was very involved. She listened, you know? even with my PMAD, she was like, I was telling her, I had that with my first daughter. So do you think I should see a therapist right now? She referred me to their therapist, which, and then when I ended up needing it, referred me to the Motherhood Center. So all of that to say, for me, like, just speaking on it, just continuing, like Dr. Birndorf was saying, continuing to just push down the doors. Every no you get, there's a yes waiting on the other side, like that's what I had to do. I just had to just keep going, because if you don't get the help for yourself, I was at a point where I thought I wanted to commit suicide, and I wasn't telling anyone, but I was at that point. But my point of saying everything I just said was because if I didn't even speak with my doctor, if I didn't get to NYU, I don't think I would have gotten to the Motherhood Center, because my OBGYN would have been like, no, you're fine. So you just have to get the help to stay. For me, it was to stay alive. Everyone has their own reasoning, but for me, it was, I needed to stay alive for my kids and my family, in all honesty,
Thank you,
So,
Janelle.
you're welcome.
You.
Like, when I was listening to Dr. Birndorf say, like, it's important to just keep, like, to find your people and to find your doctors, it's so true, because some doctors will say, no, you need surgery. And other doctors will say, okay, let's see how pelvic floor therapy goes. Let's at least try it, Let's see how that goes. They listen to you. They'll make the referral, They'll write the piece of paper it is, or papers, whatever, So for me, it was important to live.
It gives me chills to hear, of course it is, like, it's great. It's great that you kept going. And I think it can be very hard to do, because to your point, and again, I don't mean to disparage anyone who any one of us might talk to, but it's confusing, because some of the signs and symptoms of both pregnancy and postpartum are the same as the signs and symptoms of depression and anxiety. So, sleep, appetite, concentration, energy, who doesn't have those disturbances during pregnancy and postpartum? That's considered typical. And those are the first 4 signs and symptoms of depression. So it's hard to tease out, and you can see why people get confused. Even, professionals who do this all the time can get confused, but it's never normal to be hopeless or helpless or feel worthless or suicidal or guilty, excessively guilty, or obsessional. I mean, then we're in a different realm, right? Like, there's a line. But, usually the complaints start in a very kind of typical way. I'm not sleeping, I'm not eating so well, or I'm overeating or oversleeping. And then you're down the kind of like, yeah, it'll pass kind of, place, when maybe it will, maybe it won't. But you can't, unfortunately, we have to advocate for ourselves. And if we're lucky, we have family members or close confidants who will help us push through when the time is, when that's needed. But it's not easy. So Janelle, I mean, you're very both lucky and very brave to have kept pushing, and to have gotten yourself to, like, some people, I don't know if this was true for you, but will say, after they've been with us and really had the deep dive into as we say, we kind of mother the mother, they feel better than they did before they had kids, right? You didn't realize that things were a little bit tough then, right? Not that they're not still tough, but you have the tools and the ability to kind of manage, because now you got kids and they're with you for a long time, and you're lucky. And little kids, little problems, big kids, big problems. So it doesn't go away. I think of my kids now, I'm like, they're still calling in their 20s with all kinds of things. So anyhow.
Thank you, Dr. Birndorf. Leah, do you have anything to add to that question? Not to put you on the spot.
Sorry, I muted. There was a siren going by. I think just like to keep awareness deep in your heart and in your mind that you are worthy. your body is worthy of being healthy and functioning well. Your mind and spirit and soul are worthy of being nurtured and held and supported. And, you know, like, you don't have to struggle alone, whether it's physical, mental, or probably both, because I don't know if any of us can go through that transition to motherhood and not experience challenges in all aspects of our being. But you deserve support. We all struggle. There are degrees of struggle that can vary, but just reach out and keep reaching out, because someone will help you and you are worthy of that help.
Thank you for that. Thank you all for such thoughtful responses to these questions. And I just wanted to say, for people who join us maybe a little bit late, we are asking that if you have questions, please put them in the chat, and we're going to save a few minutes at the end to be able to get to those. Thank you for your patience. We're going to get to as many as we can in, gosh, about 5 minutes. So I'm going to ask a final question here before we move on over to questions from the audience. And you had touched on this just a little bit, Leah. So, you know, for so many of us that have given birth and we go to our 6-week appointment, and the OBGYN checks us out and hopefully says everything's fine, you can now return to physical activities and sexual activities. You can have sex again with your partner. And for many of us that have received that news, sometimes it can be a mixed bag. Sometimes it's more on the side of, oh gosh, I really don't want to do either of those things. What's wrong with me? Or anywhere in between. And so I think, you know, sometimes when women hear this, they feel a certain sense of pressure, right? Like they're being given permission to do it. So therefore it must be the right thing to do. And it can get triggering also for women to hear this after everything they've been through. So as a result, people can feel like they're failing if they don't want to participate in either of these activities. And I'm wondering if both of you can kind of talk about how common this is for women to feel this way. I'm not ready for that, for both physical and emotional reasons. And do you have any ideas on what women can do to manage the pressure of that? And, you know, particularly if they might be feeling pressure from their partner. So yeah, I'm wondering if everybody can take a stab at answering that question before we move over to questions from our audience.
So many thoughts, but I think take all the time you need, like just take all the time you need. And I feel like almost nobody is like, oh, yay, I'm ready. I want to have sex at 6 weeks postpartum. If you are, great. But I feel like a lot of us are still, we're touched out because there's a child. Maybe we also have a child and a baby, but we're constantly like this in this physical intimacy all day long, all night long. So it can feel like the last thing you want is more physical intimacy. I mean, I think that's a very common experience. You can still feel like, wow, maybe I'm like not hemorrhaging, but I don't feel healed down there. Like nothing feels like I want to engage in like penetrative sex. Like, I feel like that's a really normal feeling. It's like, that's okay. And I hope you have a relationship with your partner where you can talk openly about that and just like talk about how you're feeling and be intimate in that emotional way. And that can then lead to a more positive re-entry into physical intimacy when you're both ready. Talk to your girlfriends if you have, or, you know, other friends who have gone through birth, your sisters, people you know, about their experiences, if they're willing to talk with you about that, because then you can feel like, oh, it's not just me that feels this way, but a lot of people feel this way and they navigated it. They have a healthy relationship. They seem to have a great marriage or, you know, whatever it is. Like this moment is not forever and it's okay to feel how you feel.
You know what? I think I went through a serious form of.
I'm so sorry if
I'm trying.
Really want to hear people's comments and questions. If you can put it in the chat, we will make every effort to get to it.
Sure.
Thank you.
Yeah, I just agree with everything you've said, Leah. When the time is, when you're ready, and hopefully you have the relationship where that's a conversation, you can talk about it. And if you're struggling with pain, again, seeking help, making sure you're proactive so that it is potentially an enjoyable experience again when you're ready. And I don't think there's any right answer here. But there can be a lot of pressure because you get the 6, you're good to go. Well, okay, that may or may not be the right time for you. So I just think listen to yourself if that's not right. And there are lots of things you can do, and I know we've got many physical answers and ways to work with women to help. And it's also a big topic in therapy, so it can be another useful place to talk about what's stressing you out around this, if it is.
Mm-hmm.
But I know there are lots of questions, so I don't know if you're heading there, Paige.
I am going to head over to questions right now. Thanks everyone for your patience. So I have one question that just came in. I'm thinking about social determinants of health populations. What's the best action on getting resources on pelvic floor therapy? Some insurances do not cover this, like Medicaid. Leah, I'm wondering if you have any insight on that.
Well, I mean, what we kind of are is sort of a much more accessible and affordable option that can be a complement to pelvic floor physical therapy if someone has that, which is, it is really hard to get, like even outside of the sort of urban centers. It's hard to find a physical therapist who specializes in pelvic floor, and it's expensive. A lot of it is private pay, etc. So what we've done is made the resources and the tools and the education of that experience accessible very, very cheaply. If you compare, like you could get a whole year of app support versus one appointment with a PT. So that's my biggest first step, because that's why we exist, is to make what we do and what I did for private clients in New York, which was really 1 foot in physical therapy and 1 foot in sort of fitness and movement, making that accessible to women everywhere through a scalable sort of online platform.
Dr. Birndorf, question for you. This is from an audience member. As someone with a history of PMAD and expecting my second baby in February, what can I do now to prepare, practically speaking?
Well, psychologically speaking, you want to be as well as you can be, so that when PMADs are treatable. I think the best part about my job, I feel, is these are, really kind of bread and butter illnesses to treat for the most part. And so if you get treatment, you can get better, period. So I think that prevention goes a long way. So if you had this the first time around and you're talking about it and you're looking out for it and you know more and you're ready in that way, that you're preparing. I know you're asking how to prepare, but does that involve, talking with a counselor or a therapist, or being on meds, or being in or arranging things in a way that didn't happen last time but are hopefully going to be better for you next time. It's getting ready for it in those ways, really being conscious of it, because we do know that if you're well, you hopefully will stay well, right? If you're not well, you're already in trouble a little bit, right? If you're heading into the pregnancy or you're heading into the postpartum below your baseline, then you got to get treated, you got to get help. And that's the way you prevent problems down the road, right? So people will come in pregnant and say, I don't want to have a postpartum. And sometimes I say to them, well, let's treat you now, because you're already having it antepartum, right? You're having it in the pregnancy, which 50% of postpartums or PMADs start during pregnancy. So there's a lot to treat before, and some people come into the pregnancy, right, loaded with issues that really need addressing, that are keeping them down below a baseline that they want to be at. So it's never too late. You can always treat, and treating and being well is the best thing you can do to set yourself up for success.
Mm-hmm. And I'll echo exactly what you just said for the physical side, because someone might be like, well, I want to have another kid, so I'll just wait and do pelvic PT later. Do not wait. Things, if something has already sort of lost integrity in your body, and then you go through another pregnancy, that's going to go further faster. Whereas if you restore, like maybe you don't get all the way like 100% recovered, whatever that means to you, but you are feeling better, you're functioning better, that is going to set you up for a better pregnancy, better birth, better outcomes. It's worth doing it now. So take care of yourself now. And that practice is just really worth it. Yeah.
Yep. And just again, someone, treat it now. Getting ahead of it means treatment now. That's how you prevent future struggles, right? Or it not getting worse, because it will get worse, both physically and mentally. So you can't get around it.
Absolutely. I'm going to get to a few more questions as I pull up a ending slide for all of us so that everybody has contact information for both Every Mother and the Motherhood Center. Do any of you have any recommendations on how to support single parents during the postpartum period when a village and external support is extremely limited?
I would say that we have to find ways to build our own community, whatever that means. And, if that's important, and it almost always is finding your people, right? Finding your village, putting it together piece by piece. And even if you have a partner or a family that's intact and supportive, you're still building a village, and they may be part of your village. And it may be harder if you have less members of that village, but people need more or less of those to support them, or places that feel nurturing and supportive. So finding and creating, bricks in your village, people that inhabit it, it is important. And I think we all have to build that. And I think that, without a partner or without a family that's present, not that that was mentioned, but it may be that much harder, but that much more worth really going for it, right? Really in a very kind of proactive way, decidedly finding communities, finding support groups, finding others like you or similar or not, but intentionally village building.
And I want to ask one last question, and I would just want to draw everybody's attention to all the information on both of the organizations that are represented here today. And that question is, what do you do when you know someone is struggling with their physical health or mental health, but denies it and is saying that they're okay, even though you can tell that they're not? It's a hard one.
I can tell you what, this comes up a lot. We're all, many of us like to do it ourselves, right? Or not like to admit that we're struggling. And, I've been that person, and I've had to help that person. And I can tell you, one of the ways that I will approach someone who I can tell is not interested in the support, but I know something's wrong, is to like go back to those I statements. Like, I feel so worried about you. Like, you don't seem like yourself. I'm fine. Okay, you may be, and that would be awesome. Something is making me uncomfortable. I don't, it's a way of sort of using yourself in a way as an instrument to sort of offer up kind of what it's like to be with that person. And they may walk away and say, forget you. I can't believe you're saying this about me. You're criticizing me. You're hurting. People can take that very personally and say, listen, you don't already qualify it with, I really, you mean so much to me. And I see what I think is pain or struggle, and I want to help, and I'm here to help. It's really offering up both what you see and what you can do, and that hand to hold. And I think that and you may get turned away, but you'll have said it. So I think even if you can't get the person to do what you want them to do, because we can't make other people do what we want them to do, you've said it, you've offered it, you've made yourself available, so that, and I'll tell you, you can remember that stuff, and they might come back when they're ready or more ready.
Thank you, Dr. Birndorf. And Leah and Janelle, your thoughts on this final question before we close for today?
Yeah, I think sometimes people need space. As weird as that sounds, sometimes people don't know what they're really going through. So they might not even know, like, if you frame a question generally, like, oh, are you okay? And it's like, yeah, I'm okay. Like, of course I'm okay. I think sometimes being as specific as you can be, like you were saying, Dr. Burnoff, can really have someone think like, wait, am I okay? Am I feeling all right? Because sometimes you're not checking in with yourself to really know if you're doing okay. You're just moving. You're like a zombie after birth, you know? And so you never get that time to say, am I actually like, am I okay? You know? So just being specific in your question maybe might be one way to help, or even sometimes if you know if you feel like someone's already not themselves, offering a solution as well with your question. Maybe that might sound like too forward, but sometimes people don't even know where to look and they're like, well, I'm not feeling okay, but I don't know what to do with that, so I'm just going to say I'm okay, you know?
Absolutely.
I think that's a really good idea to like kind of leave resources there so that if and when they might have that awareness that actually I do need help, it's right there. Like they don't have to go look it up. They don't have to figure it out. And then the other thing I would say more as an interpersonal sort of communication is just that you are there and you are available, and it doesn't matter if they need anything, if they need you, if they're struggling, if they're not struggling, you're there, and that doesn't change, so that they can reach out when they're ready and they feel welcome. I think that can always help.
Well, I just want to thank everybody, our wonderful panelists for today. This went by so quickly, and I know we're just a few minutes over. Thank you so much, Leah. And I just want to direct everybody who's with us to all of the information on Every Mother. What a fabulous opportunity it is for people who are experiencing pelvic floor and diastasis recti complications. And also thank you so much, Dr. Birndorf, for all of your insight on maternal mental health and perinatal mood and anxiety disorders. We have all of our information on the Motherhood Center here if you have any questions or if you're looking for support or treatment. And Janelle, such a shout out to you for being so open and transparent about your own experiences. And even though you don't know it, it sounds like you could totally be an expert in either of these fields yourself. So thank you, everybody. Thanks for all of our audience members for being here. We weren't able to get to every question, but we did our best. And thank you. Keep your eye out for more seminars and webinars on topics just like this. And have a wonderful rest of the day, everybody.
Thank you so much.